Welcome to Learn English Speaking. Let's talk stories. Here we bring you amazing stories to improve your English fluency. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting lessons. Let's learn together.
Chapter 1. Farmer and Soldier. At the height of its power, the great Roman Empire stretched from the deserts of Africa to the borders of northern England. Over 1/4 of the world's population lived and died under the rule of the Caesars. In the winter of AD 180, Emperor Marcus Aurelius's 12-year war against the people of Germania was coming to an end. There was one last battle to win. Then there would be peace across the Roman Empire. The man walked through the sun-warmed Spanish field, his hand touching the wheat. He looked past apple trees to a farmhouse. He heard a child laughing somewhere near. A bird flew onto the branch of a tree close to him, and they looked at each other. The man smiled. Suddenly, the sound of shouts and horses frightened the bird, and it flew up into the air. The noise broke through the man's daydream, and he came back to the real world with a crash. He was not dressed in farmer's clothes, as he had imagined, but in the proud armor of the Roman army. The field was burnt and muddy from battle, without a green leaf on it. Beyond the tree line ahead, somewhere in the forest, the German armies were preparing to attack again. The man knew that behind him an enormous army waited. The Roman army, 40,000 men. His army. Maximus the farmer was Maximus, the commanding general of the Army of the North, for one more battle. One last battle, and then he could go home to Spain. He turned his horse and rode back to his men. 30-year-old Maximus was a great general, a man they could trust. He moved among them, checking that they were ready for battle. He looked back frequently to the line of trees. Some of his officers were warming themselves around a fire, and Maximus joined them. "Still nothing?" he asked Quintus, his second in command. Quintus shook his head. "He's been gone for almost 2 hours," he said. "Why are they taking so long? They only have to say yes or no." A young officer gave Maximus a bowl of hot soup. He drank it slowly as they talked, always keeping one eye on the line of trees. "Snow in the air," said Maximus. "I can smell it." "Anything's better than this German rain," Quintus said, looking out at the mud in front of his men. Suddenly, there was a shout. "He's coming!" All eyes turned to the trees. A horseman rode out toward the Roman army. There was something strange about the way he was riding. Maximus was the first to understand. "They say no," he said. As the horse came closer, the other men could see what had happened. The Roman messenger was tied to his horse. His head had been cut off. Maximus knew now what he had to do. Life was suddenly simple. Far away, at the edge of the trees, a German chief appeared. In one hand, he was holding the head of the messenger. He screamed his anger at the Roman army, then threw the head toward them. Maximus's men stared back and waited for their general's order to attack. Several carriages traveled along the road toward the battle area, protected by Roman soldiers. Inside the first carriage were the royal family, the emperor's son and daughter. 28-year-old Commodus and his beautiful older sister Lucilla were dressed in rich, warm clothes. They had left Rome 2 weeks before. "Do you think he's really dying?" Commodus asked Lucilla. "He's been dying for 10 years, she replied. "I think he's really sick this time, and he's sent for us." He pointed to the following carriages. He sent for the senators, too. If he isn't dying, why does he want to see them? Commodus, you're giving me a headache. 2 weeks on the road with you is more than enough, said Lucilla impatiently. Commodus moved closer to her. No, he's made his decision, he said. He will name me as emperor, and I know what I shall do first. I shall organize some games. I shall have a hot bath, said Lucilla. The carriage stopped. Commodus stepped down and spoke to one of the guards. We are almost there, sir. Good, said Commodus. Bring me my horse. Under his warm traveling coat, Commodus was wearing Roman armor. He looked handsome and brave, the perfect picture of a new young emperor. The guard brought Commodus his horse. Take me to my father, and take my sister to the camp. Commodus reached out a hand to Lucilla. Kiss, he said, smiling like a little boy. Lucilla brushed his fingers with her lips, then watched him ride away. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, sat on his horse and stared at the army below. His hair and beard were white, but only his eyes really showed his age and state of health. Marcus knew he was dying, and soon he must name the next emperor. But first, this battle must be won. From another hill, Maximus also looked down onto the Roman army. His men were ready to fight. The German soldiers started to move out from the trees. There were thousands of them, dressed in animal skins, shouting at their Roman enemies. Maximus bent down from his horse and took some earth in his hands, as he did before every battle. Then he let it fall through his fingers. It was a sign his men had seen many times before, and they knew what it meant. Maximus gave the command, and a flaming arrow shot into the sky. Hundreds more followed. Thousands of German soldiers rushed forward and met the first line of Romans. The air was filled with the sound of screaming as more arrows landed, and men from both armies died terrible deaths. Maximus led soldiers on horseback into the battle at the same time as 5,000 Roman foot soldiers moved forward from another side. Each man marched behind a large shield. Each carried a sword. The Germans were caught between two walls of death. Above them, the sky was full of flaming arrows. They were fighting for their lives. Suddenly, Maximus was trapped between two Germans. He swung his sword around in a circle, striking both men dead. Then he rode forward again, and his sword cut through the enemy soldiers in his path. Maximus's horse suddenly fell forward, a German sword in its neck. The general flew over his horse's head and crashed to the ground. There was danger all around him, but he continued fighting. He found the Roman flag, still in the hand of a dead soldier, and held it high. His men fought their way toward it and defended their position bravely. More and more Roman soldiers moved forward onto the battleground. They were well trained and had the best equipment and armor. The Germans were not as good as the confident Roman army, and finally they began to tire. Maximus saw that he was winning and moved up a little higher on the hill. From there he could see and command his men better. The enemy began to lose confidence, and some turned and ran. More joined them, and soon the only Germans on the battlefield were dead or dying. Maximus went back down and walked among them. As he stepped over bodies, he began to relax and let his sword arm fall to his side. Behind him, a dying German suddenly lifted himself from the ground and rushed forward with his sword. Maximus was calling an order to one of his officers when he saw the sudden look of terror on the officer's face and immediately swung his sword around, cutting off his attacker's head. There was so much power behind the sword that it flew from his hand and landed in a tree. Maximus had no strength left to pull it out again. The battle had ended. As he looked at the dead around him, he could only think that his men had won, and he had lived. Chapter 2. The Last Battle. Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat on his horse on the top of the command hill with guards on each side to protect him. He watched as the battle slowly progressed, and it became clear that the Roman army had won. Marcus hoped it would be many years before they had to go to war again. Certainly not before he died. He had no wish to see another battle. He turned to his guards. "I will leave now," he said. "I have seen enough." Maximus looked at his sword in the tree. His face was covered with blood and mud. The beat of his heart was beginning to slow down as the noise of the battle became quieter. There were other sounds now. Screams from the dying and cries for help. A small bird flew down from the top of the tree and sat on Maximus's sword. Could it possibly be the same bird he had seen before the first explosion of battle? That seemed like 100 years ago. He shook his head and reached for the sword. The frightened bird flew away as Maximus pulled his sword out of the tree. Across the field, doctors were trying to help any Roman soldiers who were still alive. Other soldiers were walking slowly through the men on the ground, looking for Germans left alive, and killing them quickly. Maximus walked back toward the command point, sometimes stopping to speak to a dying soldier, sometimes calling for water or medical help. He came to a low hill where the bodies of Roman soldiers had been placed, side by side. "Let the sun always be warm on your back," he said softly. "You've come home at last." "You're a brave man, Maximus, and a good commander," said a voice behind him. "Let us hope it is for the last time." Maximus turned and saw the emperor. "There's no one left to fight, sir," he said. "There are always people to fight. More glory." "The glory is theirs, Caesar," said Maximus, looking at the lines of dead soldiers. "Tell me," said Marcus, "how can I reward Rome's greatest general?" "Let me go home," replied Maximus quickly. "Ah, home," said Marcus. He gave his arm to Maximus, and they walked together back across the battlefield. All eyes followed the long purple coat and white hair of their emperor. They could see that he moved slowly and with difficulty. He was clearly in pain. Most of the soldiers realized that they were probably seeing him for the last time. And they knew Rome was not likely to have such a good emperor again. Marcus Aurelius and his general walked along the road past lines of tired soldiers. Hundreds of men resting on a hill stood and raised their swords high in the air when they saw them pass. "They honor you, Caesar," said Maximus. "No, Maximus. I believe they honor you," replied the emperor. Maximus looked across at the crowd of brave men and raised his own sword. The men cheered him loudly. Suddenly, Prince Commodus and his guards rode into view. When he heard the cheering and saw the reason for it, Commodus was filled with jealousy. Roman soldiers were honoring a Spaniard above the emperor and his family. It was not right. But he tried to look pleased as he rode up to Marcus and Maximus. "Have I missed the battle?" he said, jumping from his horse. "You've missed the war," said Marcus. "We're finished here." Commodus put his arms around his father. "Father, congratulations," he said. I shall kill 100 animals to honor your success." "Let the animals live and honor Maximus," said Marcus. "He won the battle." "General," Commodus said, turning to Maximus, "Rome salutes you, and I salute you as a brother." He opened his arms and put them around Maximus. "It has been too long since we last met." "How long?" 10 years, my old friend?" Commodus turned to Marcus. "Here, father, take my arm." Marcus let his hand rest on his son for a minute, then said, "I think maybe I should leave you now." Commodus called for Marcus's horse, and some of the guards ran forward to help him. The old man waved them away and looked at Maximus. Maximus came quickly to his side and helped him onto the horse. Without a word to his son, he rode slowly away. Commodus and Maximus stood together and watched the emperor go, each thinking their own thoughts about him. Marcus had won many battles for the glory of Rome, but Maximus would always remember him first as a good man. Commodus's thoughts were very different. He was angry that his father had not put his arms around him. He was jealous because Maximus was asked to help Marcus onto the horse, and the emperor had spoken privately to him. He swung himself back onto his horse and rode away, followed by his guards. A city of hospital tents had been built. There were thousands of wounded Roman soldiers, and the doctors were busy all night. Maximus came out of one of the tents. He was sad that so many men were badly hurt, and he knew that many more would not live until morning. He turned and walked back to the main camp. In the biggest tent, many of the officers were celebrating. There was wine and food. They were laughing and shouting. These were the lucky men who had cheated death. The emperor sat in a chair in the center of the tent and received visitors. 2 senators, Falco and Gaius, had just arrived. "We greet you, Marcus Aurelius," Falco said. "And we bring greetings from Senator Gracchus. He waits to honor you when you return to Rome." When Maximus entered the tent, officers came forward to meet him. Someone gave him wine. Others held their hands out to him. Quintus stopped his conversation when he saw his friend. "Still alive. The gods must love you," they both said together, laughing. Maximus moved through the tent, with Quintus and some of his other officers following behind. Through the forest of men, Maximus could see Marcus Aurelius surrounded by a group of people. As he got nearer, he saw Commodus at the emperor's side with the 2 senators. Maximus paused to speak to another officer. "Back to Rome now, General?" the man asked. "I'm going home," Maximus said, "to my wife, my son, and my fields of wheat." "Maximus the farmer," Quintus said, laughing. "I still can't imagine that." "Dirt washes off more easily than blood, Quintus," replied Maximus. Commodus, Gaius, and Falco came toward Maximus. "Here he is," said Commodus, "the hero of the war." Maximus was not happy that Commodus had said this in front of his brave officers. To him, they were all heroes. Commodus introduced the 2 senators. They were smart politicians, and they saw that Maximus could have an interesting future in Rome. The real power was not with the emperor. It was with whoever had control of the army. Commodus led Maximus away to a quieter corner. He spoke softly. "Times are changing, General. I'm going to need good men like you." "How can I help, sir?" "You're a man who can command. You give orders, the men follow your orders. The battle is won." Commodus looked across at the senators. We must save Rome from the politicians, my friend. Will you be with me when the time comes? When your father allows me to go, I will return to Spain, sir, said Maximus. Home? Ah, yes. But don't get too comfortable. I may call on you soon. Then, seeming suddenly to remember, Commodus said, Lucilla is here, did you know? She hasn't forgotten you. And now you are the great hero. He turned away to watch his father leaving the tent with his guards. Caesar will sleep early tonight, he said. When he turned back again, Maximus had gone. Commodus was anxious. Who did the great general really support? Could he be trusted? Commodus took some more wine and thought carefully about Maximus. Marcus's slaves helped him into the royal tent. Lucilla was already there. It's a pity I only have one son, Marcus said to her. You would be a better Caesar than Commodus. Stronger. I wonder if you would also be fair. I would be whatever you taught me to be, she replied, smiling. She came to his side and kissed him. How was the trip? Marcus asked. Long. Boring. Why have I come? Asked Lucilla. I need your help, said her father, with your brother. He loves you. He always has. Soon, he is going to need you more than ever. Lucilla did not know what to say. No more. It is not a night for politics, Marcus said. It is a night for an old man and his daughter to look at the moon together. Let us pretend that you are a loving daughter, and I am a good father. Lucilla took his arm, and they walked together into the cold night air. This is a pleasant fiction, she said, smiling at him. Lucilla understood him. She knew that her father would love to be just a simple old man, sharing a little time with his daughter. But he was Emperor of Rome, and for him, life was much more complicated. In the cold morning, at the edge of the forest, a group of men were training for battle. Commodus and his guards were practicing sword fighting, striking at small trees. The young prince was proud of his body. He was strong and healthy as a result of the strict training he did every morning. His training program was taken straight from the gladiator schools, where men learned to fight for their lives. His greatest wish was to fight against real gladiators, although he knew that his father would never allow it. Marcus had ended the tradition of gladiator fights in Rome. Maximus passed by the small group of men in the early morning light and noticed that the emperor's son was among them. He was not surprised. He had heard plenty of stories about Commodus, how strong and skilled he was. He had also heard that Commodus was a cruel man, but he tried not to believe that. There were always jealous people saying bad things about the royal family. Maximus walked to Marcus's tent. The emperor's guards let him through the entrance without any questions. They were expecting him. Chapter 3. One More Duty. The only light in the emperor's tent came from oil lamps. Marcus sat with his back to Maximus. He was writing his diary, and at first he did not realize Maximus had arrived. Caesar, you sent for me, said Maximus. Marcus, lost in his thoughts, did not reply. Caesar, Maximus repeated. Tell me again, Maximus, Marcus said. Why are we here? For the glory of the Empire, sir. At first he thought Marcus had not heard him. Then Marcus slowly got up from his desk and softly said, Yes, I remember. He walked over to a large map of the Roman Empire and waved a hand across it. Do you see it, Maximus? This is the world I have made. For 20 years I have tried to be a student of life and of men. But what have I really done? He touched the map. For 20 years I have fought and won battles. I have defended the empire and increased it. Since I became Caesar, I have only had 4 years of peace. And for what? To make our borders safe, said Maximus, to bring teaching and law. I brought the sword, nothing more. And while I have fought, Rome has grown fat and diseased. I did this. And nothing can change the fact that Rome is far away, and we shouldn't be here. But Caesar, Maximus started, but Marcus interrupted him. Don't call me that, he said. We have to talk together now, very simply, just as men. Can we do that? 40,000 of my men are out there now, freezing in the mud, said Maximus. 8,000 are wounded, and 2,000 will never leave this place. I won't believe they fought and died for nothing. What do you believe, Maximus? That they fought for you, and for Rome, he replied. And what is Rome, Maximus? Tell me. I've seen too much of the rest of the world, and I know it's cruel and dark. I have to believe that Rome is the light. But you have never been there, said Marcus. You have not seen Rome as it is now. Maximus had heard stories about Rome. People in the cities were hungry, and food prices were much too high. Some Romans had become very rich, but most were poor. Bridges, roads, and ports all needed repairs, while tax money went into the pockets of the rich. There were many things wrong at the heart of the enormous empire. I am dying, Maximus, and I want to see that there has been some purpose to my life. Marcus sat down again. It's strange. I think more about the future than the present. How will the world speak my name in future years? He held out his hand to Maximus, who took it and came to sit next to Marcus. You have a son, said the emperor. You must love him very much. Tell me about your home. The house is in the hills above Trujillo, Maximus began. It's a simple place, pink stones that warm in the sun. There's a wall, a gate, and a small field of vegetables. Maximus looked up and saw that the old man had closed his eyes as he listened. He was smiling. Through the gate are apple trees. The earth is black, Marcus, as black as my wife's hair. And we grow fruit and vegetables. There are wild horses near the house. My son loves them. How long is it since you were last home? 2 years, 264 days, and 1 morning. Marcus laughed. I am jealous of you, Maximus. Your home is good, something to fight for. I have one more duty to ask of you before you go home. What would you like me to do, Caesar? Before I die, I will give the people a final gift. An empire at peace should not be ruled by one man. I want to give power back to the Senate. Maximus was shocked. But, sir, if no one man holds power, all men will reach for it. You're right. That is why I want you to become the protector of Rome. Give power back to the people of Rome. Maximus said nothing. You don't want this great honor? With all my heart, no. That is why it must be you, Marcus replied. But what about Commodus? Commodus is not a good man. I think you already know that. He must not rule. You are more of a son to me than he is. Marcus stood up. Commodus will accept my decision. He knows the army is loyal to you. A piece of ice struck Maximus's heart. I need some time, sir, he said. Of course. By sunrise tomorrow, I hope your answer will be yes. Now, let me hold you as a son. Marcus put his arms around Maximus. Maximus left the emperor's tent feeling anxious. One more duty, one he did not want. But could he refuse? He was a loyal soldier, loyal to Rome and to Caesar. He stood outside the tent, trying to think clearly. Suddenly, there was a voice behind him. You are my father's favorite now. Maximus turned and saw Lucilla. As their eyes met, a shock of emotion ran through them both. It was not always true, said Lucilla. Many things have changed since we last met, said Maximus, and he turned to walk away. What did my father want with you? To wish me luck before I leave for Spain, he replied. You're lying, said Lucilla. I could always tell when you were lying. You're not very good at it. I was never as good as you, my lady. Lucilla did not try to deny it. Again, Maximus tried to leave. Maximus, please. Is it really so terrible to see me again? No. I'm sorry. I'm tired from battle, he said. And you're upset to see my father so weak. Commodus expects our father to name him in a few days as the next Caesar. Will you be as loyal to him as you have been to Marcus? This was a difficult question, but Maximus never forgot that he was talking to one of the royal family. I will always be loyal to Rome, he said. Do you know I still remember you when I speak to the gods? Said Lucilla, smiling. I was sorry to hear of your husband's death. I understand you have a son. Yes, said Lucilla. Lucius. He's almost 8 years old. I, too, have a son who is 8 years old. They smiled at each other again. I thank you for your kind thoughts, said Maximus. And then he walked slowly back to his tent. Lucilla watched him go. Her thoughts were confused, and her emotions reminded her that she had once loved this man. Maximus sat in front of a low table in his tent. On the table were small wooden figures of his family. parents and grandparents. In the center, protected by the others, were the two smallest figures. These were his wife and child. As he looked at his family, he tried to imagine what his father or grandfather would do in his situation. What would they decide? How would they advise him? He picked up the figure of his wife and kissed it. "Cicero," he called out. Behind him, his servant Cicero appeared and gave him a drink. "Do you ever find it difficult to do your duty?" Maximus asked him. Cicero, a tall, thin man with long hair, thought about the question for a few seconds.
"Sometimes I do what I want to do, sir,"
he said.
"The rest of the time, I do what I have to do."
Maximus smiled. "We may not be able to go home," he said, sadly. Marcus Aurelius sat in his great tent, lit only by the light of a fire, and prepared himself to tell Commodus of his decision. Finally he said, "You will do your duty for Rome." Commodus stood in front of him, proud and tall, waiting to hear his father name him as the next Caesar. "Yes, father," he said. "But you will not be emperor," Marcus said. Commodus froze as his future suddenly disappeared. "Who will take my place?" he asked. "My power will pass to Maximus, to hold until the Senate is ready to rule. Rome will be a republic again. I can see that you are not happy, my son."
"You break my heart,"
Commodus said.
"I have tried to make you proud, but I could never do it. Why do you hate me so much? I only wanted to be your son, but I was never quite good enough."
Marcus put his arms around his son, and Commodus cried.
"Why does Maximus deserve this instead of me? Why do you love him more than me?"
His voice grew louder as he held his father's head tighter and tighter. Marcus could not breathe. He began to move, trying to get away, but Commodus held his father's face close against his chest. His strength was too great. Marcus could not escape. Commodus did not relax until he felt his father's body drop in his arms. He placed him on the bed. Dead.
"You didn't love me enough,"
he said softly. Quintus woke Maximus in the middle of the night. Maximus realized immediately that there was trouble.
"The Emperor needs you," Quintus said. "It's urgent."
"What is it?" Maximus asked.
"They did not tell me," said Quintus.
They hurried to Marcus's tent together. At the entrance, the guards let them through without a word. Inside, Maximus saw Commodus first. His face was white, but showed no emotion. Lucilla stood in a corner of the tent, looking down at the floor. Then Maximus saw Marcus, lying on his bed. He knew immediately that he was dead. "How did he die?" he asked.
"In his sleep," said Commodus. "The doctors say there was no pain."
Maximus looked at Lucilla, but she turned away. He walked to the bed, bent over Marcus, and kissed the top of his head. Then he stood and faced Commodus. Commodus looked back at him and held out his hand.
"Your emperor asks for your loyalty," he said. "Take my hand, Maximus."
Maximus understood the situation exactly. He knew without a doubt that Commodus had killed his father.
"I shall only offer it once," said Commodus.
Maximus walked past him and out of the tent. Quintus already had his orders from the new Caesar. Commodus looked across at him, and he followed his general out into the night. Lucilla bent over her father and kissed him. Then she turned to her brother. Their eyes met. She hit his face twice, hard. He stepped back, shocked. Then she took his right hand, lifted it to her lips, and kissed it. "I greet you, Caesar," Lucilla said, without emotion. Back in his own tent, Maximus called to Cicero. "I must talk to the senators," he said. "Wake Gaius and Falco. I need their advice." Quintus arrived just then and caught the servant's arm to stop him. "Maximus, please, be careful." "Careful? The emperor was murdered," said Maximus. "No," said Quintus. "The emperor died in his sleep." Maximus looked toward the entrance of the tent and saw 4 royal guards with their swords ready. They came in and quickly tied his hands and arms. "Please, don't fight, Maximus," said Quintus. "I'm sorry. Caesar has spoken." Maximus understood. Quintus was a soldier, and his orders had come from the top. He had to obey. "Quintus, promise me you'll look after my family," said Maximus. "Your family will greet you in the next world," Quintus said quietly. Maximus jumped at him in anger. One of the guards hit the prisoner on the back of the head with the handle of his sword, and Maximus fell to the ground. "Take him as far as the sunrise, and then kill him," said Quintus. It was nearly sunrise, and the 5 horses on the forest road had not passed anybody for several hours. Here, there was nothing. No help. No hope. "All right, this is far enough," said Cornelius, the oldest of the guards and their leader. "Take him down there. No one will ever find him." 2 of the guards climbed from their horses and pulled Maximus from his horse. His hands were still tied in front of him. Cornelius searched in his bag for something to eat. He would make sure the orders from Caesar were obeyed, but he did not want to have Roman blood on his hands. The other man, Salvius, stayed with the 3 horses. The 2 guards led Maximus down the hill. They thought he had given up the fight, but he was like a cat watching a mouse. He could see they were young, and their armor was still new. These were royal guards. They almost never left Rome, and they did not usually go into battle. They were not experienced fighters. "This is good enough," said one of them. "On your knees." Behind Maximus, one of the guards was ready with his sword to cut off his head. The second guard stood facing Maximus. Maximus sunk to his knees and closed his eyes. As the sword came down, he turned very quickly and caught it between his hands. Then he brought the handle of the sword up into the guard's face. In the next second, he turned again and struck the sword through the other guard. As he got to his feet and turned back to the first man, he saw his chance and pushed the sword through his body. On the road above, Cornelius and Salvius were waiting on their horses. They heard a cry from below, and then it was quiet again. Cornelius sent Salvius down to make certain Maximus was dead. The guard rode down the hill, but saw nothing of his friends. Suddenly, he felt there was someone behind him. He turned in time to see Maximus's sword as it flew through the air toward him and landed in his chest. He fell to his death. Cornelius was still on his horse, eating his bread and meat. He heard some noises below, moved across the road, and looked down into the trees. With no sound at all, Maximus came onto the road behind him. "God!" he shouted. Cornelius turned around and rode toward Maximus at full speed, his sword ready. As they met, Maximus struck his sword upward and back. It cut right through Cornelius's body. Cornelius fell off his horse and lay down to die. But Maximus had also been wounded. with a deep cut to his shoulder from Cornelius's sword. He fought the pain and moved toward the horses.